14 meters above the jungle floor of northern Luzon, Corporal Takeshi Yamamoto adjusted his position in the acacia tree and smiled behind his scope. The morning sun of March 1944 painted the rice paddies below in shades of gold, and through his magnified view, he could see a figure moving along the eastern paddy dike, an old farmer carrying what looked like a farming tool and wearing the simple clothes of a provincial peasant. They believed they were beyond the reach of the imperial forces this far north. They believed wrong. How foolish these locals were to think they could move freely in broad daylight, Yamamoto thought as he tracked the figure's unhurried pace. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. It really helps support the channel. What Corporal Yamamoto could not know, what his training and confidence would not allow him to imagine, was that in exactly 3 minutes, his entire understanding of this conflict would transform, and the man he dismissed as nothing more than a simple farmer would teach him a lesson that military academies never covered. The morning had begun routinely for Yamamoto. He had climbed to his position before dawn, as he had done for the past 16 days since his unit established a forward observation post near the village of San Fernando. His mission was straightforward: monitor the northern approaches, document local movement patterns, and eliminate any confirmed resistance fighters who operated in the region. Intelligence reports suggested that guerrilla activity had increased dramatically since January, but the reports were vague, contradictory, and often based on rumors rather than concrete evidence. Yamamoto had trained at the Imperial Army Sniper School in Manchuria for 8 months. He knew his craft. He understood wind drift, elevation adjustment, and the psychological principles of patience. His Type 97 rifle, accurate to 500 meters, had accounted for 11 confirmed engagements since his arrival in the Philippines in December 1943. He trusted his equipment, his training, and most importantly, his judgment. Through his scope, he continued observing the figure. The man moved without urgency, occasionally pausing to examine the rice plants along the paddy edge. His clothes were worn but clean, the typical attire of someone who worked the land. The object he carried appeared to be a bamboo pole, possibly used for irrigation work or carrying baskets. Everything about the scene suggested normalcy, the ordinary rhythm of agricultural life continuing, despite the larger conflict that swirled around these remote provinces. Yet something nagged at Yamamoto's trained senses. The man's movements, while appearing casual, followed a pattern. He paused at specific intervals, always positioning himself near cover, a rock outcropping here, a thick stand of bamboo there. The pauses lasted approximately 30 seconds each. Was this coincidence, or was this individual conducting his own surveillance? Yamamoto had learned to trust his instincts. 5 months in the Philippines had taught him that the local population was more complex than the briefing suggested. The distinction between civilian and resistance fighter was often invisible until the moment of engagement. Still, engagement protocols were clear. Positive identification of hostile intent was required before action. Appearing to be a farmer working his land did not constitute hostile intent. The figure continued his progress along the paddy dike, now roughly 400 meters from Yamamoto's position. At this range, in perfect morning light with minimal wind, the shot would be elementary. But Yamamoto had not survived this long by being hasty. He had seen other members of his unit make that mistake, assuming acting without proper assessment, and sometimes paying for that impatience with positions compromised or worse. 300 meters now. The man stopped again, this time kneeling beside the water as if inspecting something in the flooded paddy. Yamamoto adjusted his scope magnification to maximum power. The man's face came into clearer view, middle-aged, perhaps 40 or 45, with the weathered skin of someone who had spent decades working under the tropical sun. His hands moved through the water, appearing to check something beneath the surface. Then Yamamoto saw it. As the man's hand emerged from the water, something glinted in the morning light. Not a tool, not agricultural equipment. The distinctive profile of a weapon, partially concealed but unmistakable to someone trained to recognize such things. But the weapon itself looked absurd, small, probably ancient, possibly even handmade. Local guerrillas were known to carry whatever arms they could acquire, often weapons that were decades old or cobbled together from salvaged parts. Yamamoto found himself almost amused. The intelligence reports had mentioned that resistance fighters in this region were poorly equipped, often carrying single-shot hunting pieces or even homemade weapons that were as dangerous to their users as to their targets. This weapon, whatever it was, looked like little more than a toy compared to his Type 97 rifle with its precision sight and effective range measured in hundreds of meters. The figure rose from his kneeling position and continued moving. The weapon now held loosely at his side, no longer concealed but not exactly brandished either. His path would take him into a clearing approximately 250 meters from Yamamoto's position, an open area where cover was minimal and observation was optimal. Yamamoto's smile widened. The guerrillas in this region had proven troublesome, conducting small-scale raids on supply convoys and communication lines, but they were poorly coordinated and inadequately armed. This individual, whoever he was, represented the kind of threat that existed more in rumor than reality. Farmers playing at resistance, carrying outdated weapons and relying on luck rather than training. The figure entered the clearing, now 240 meters. Yamamoto's finger moved to the trigger guard, not yet entering, just positioning. The protocols required warning or clear hostile action before engagement, and while the presence of a weapon technically qualified, something made Yamamoto hesitate. Perhaps it was professional pride, the desire to observe more, to understand the full tactical picture before committing to action. Perhaps it was curiosity about what this man intended to do with that inadequate weapon. The man stopped in the center of the clearing. He set down what appeared to be a small pack he had been carrying and straightened his posture. Then, in a movement that seemed almost theatrical, he raised the weapon, not aiming toward Yamamoto's position, but skyward, as if testing its weight or checking its condition. Yamamoto shook his head slightly. The man had no idea he was being observed, no awareness that a trained marksman with a superior weapon held every advantage. The arrogance or ignorance required to stand exposed in an open clearing during wartime was remarkable. Either this individual was supremely confident in his knowledge of Japanese patrol patterns, or he was simply foolish. Through the scope, Yamamoto could now see the weapon more clearly. It appeared to be a bolt-action rifle, possibly American in origin given the stock profile, but ancient, likely from the Spanish-American conflict era, or perhaps even earlier. The wood was dark with age and use, and the metal components showed signs of extensive wear. Effective range on such a weapon would be perhaps 150 meters at best, assuming it was properly maintained and the ammunition was reliable, both questionable assumptions for guerrilla equipment. The man lowered the rifle and appeared to scan the surrounding area. His gaze passed over Yamamoto's position without pause, without recognition. The acacia tree's thick foliage provided excellent concealment, and Yamamoto had taken care to position himself where backlight would not create a silhouette. To the man below, this was just another tree in a landscape full of trees. 230 meters now separated them. Yamamoto's training had emphasized the importance of patience, of allowing situations to develop fully before committing to a course of action. The man's presence here, armed but not immediately threatening, posed interesting questions. Was he scouting for a larger guerrilla unit? Was he posted as a sentry? Was he simply a foolish individual who had acquired a weapon and wanted to feel important by carrying it? The figure moved again, this time walking with more purpose toward the western edge of the clearing. His path would take him behind a cluster of banana trees that would provide temporary cover. Yamamoto tracked him through the scope, waiting to see what would happen when the man emerged on the other side. 30 seconds passed. 45. The man did not emerge. Yamamoto felt the first small pulse of uncertainty. Had the individual spotted something? Had he detected surveillance and taken cover? Or was there a simple explanation? Perhaps a path through the banana grove that Yamamoto could not see from his angle. 1 minute. Still no movement. Yamamoto's smile faded. His position was secure, that much he was certain of. The tree line behind him was dense, his approach route had been carefully planned, and he had left no evidence of his presence. Yet the man's disappearance created a tactical problem. An unseen opponent, even one poorly armed, was more dangerous than a visible one. Yamamoto adjusted his position slightly, trying to gain a better angle on the banana grove. The movement required shifting his weight, redistributing his body along the branch that served as his platform. He moved slowly, mindful that even small motions could create telltale movements in the foliage above. Then he heard it, a sound so soft that at first he thought he had imagined it. The distinct click of metal on metal, the sound of a firearm mechanism being manipulated. The sound came not from the banana grove ahead, but from somewhere below and to his right. Yamamoto froze. His mind raced through possibilities. The man could not have covered that distance silently. The open ground between the banana grove and Yamamoto's tree offered no concealment, unless the man had never gone through the banana grove at all. Unless what Yamamoto had tracked was a deliberate deception, a ruse designed to draw his attention, while the actual approach came from a different vector. He heard a voice then, speaking in clear English with the distinctive accent of the educated Filipino. The voice was calm, almost conversational, and it came from approximately 20 meters below his position, though the dense foliage made visual contact impossible. "Go ahead and take your shot, farmer," the voice said. "You have been watching for 16 days. You know the routes, you know the timing, you think your height gives you advantage, but you forgot to check the ground before you climbed." Yamamoto's breath caught. 16 days. The voice had said 16 days. That was exactly how long he had been operating from this area, rotating between 3 different observation points, this tree being his primary position. The man knew. Somehow, impossibly, the man knew. "Your rifle is Type 97, the voice continued. "Range 500 meters, rate of fire approximately 10 rounds per minute under optimal conditions. You carry 120 rounds, divided into 8-round stripper clips. Your last resupply was 4 days ago. You received rations sufficient for 2 weeks. You have water for 3 days without resupply." Yamamoto felt sweat forming on his palms, despite the morning coolness. This was not a simple farmer. This was not a poorly trained guerrilla carrying a toy weapon. This was someone with intelligence, training, and most critically, information. "My weapon," the voice said, and Yamamoto heard what might have been amusement in the tone, "is a Springfield Model 1898. American manufacture, 30 caliber, effective range 600 meters in capable hands. I acquired it from my grandfather, who carried it during the Spanish conflict. You are correct that it is old, you are incorrect about everything else." Yamamoto's mind worked frantically. His tactical situation had transformed from advantageous to uncertain in seconds. He could not see his opponent. His position was known. Moving would create noise and motion that would pinpoint his exact location. Staying still meant accepting that someone with a functional weapon had the initiative. The voice spoke again. "I'm going to count to 180. That is 3 minutes by your military timing. During those 3 minutes you will need to make a decision. You can attempt to engage me, though you cannot see me, and I know precisely where you are. You can attempt to retreat, though your descent path is covered and your alternative routes are known. Or you can surrender your weapon and come down peacefully." Yamamoto's training had not prepared him for this. His scenarios had involved engaging visible targets, extracting under fire, or holding position against assaults. None had addressed a situation where the opponent demonstrated superior intelligence and tactical positioning while remaining unseen. 1, the voice began. 2, 3, Yamamoto's options scrolled through his mind. His rifle was loaded with a full clip. If he could identify the voice's location, even approximately, he could lay down suppressing fire and use the confusion to relocate. The tree had multiple descent routes, and he had memorized them during his initial reconnaissance. 21, 22, 23. But moving meant exposure, and the voice had mentioned that the descent paths were covered, which implied either multiple fighters or prepared positions. The banana grove suddenly made sense. It had never been the man's destination, but rather a staging point, a place where he could circle around while Yamamoto's attention was fixed forward. 45, 46, 47. Yamamoto tried to control his breathing. Panic was the enemy of tactical thinking. He was trained. He was equipped. He had advantages even in this compromised position. His elevation still provided visibility once he repositioned. His weapon still outranged anything a guerrilla might carry. 70, 71, 72. The counting continued with mechanical precision. Yamamoto realized that the voice was using the count not just as a timer, but as a psychological weapon. Each number was a reminder that time was passing, that decisions were being forced, that initiative had shifted. 100, 101, 102. Yamamoto made his decision. He would shift position rapidly, using the thick trunk as cover, and attempt to spot his opponent from the opposite side of the tree. If he could identify a target, even briefly, his training and equipment would provide the edge he needed. 133, 134, 135. He began to move, keeping his rifle close, using his free hand to grasp branches for support. The shift required several seconds of concentration, during which his attention was divided between movement and observation. 160, 161, 162. Yamamoto reached the trunk's opposite side and immediately scanned the ground below. Nothing. No movement. No figure. The voice had fallen silent after completing the count to 162. The silence was somehow more unnerving than the counting had been. Then he saw it. On a branch 3 meters below his position, carefully positioned among the leaves, was a small object. Yamamoto's enhanced training allowed him to identify it immediately. A mirror, angled to reflect light in a specific direction. He followed the reflection angle and understood with sudden, cold clarity what had happened. The mirror was positioned to show his original location to an observer on the ground. Every movement he had made for the past 2 minutes had been visible to someone watching that reflection. His repositioning had been tracked, observed, and noted. He was not hiding from his opponent. His opponent was showing him that hiding was impossible. The voice returned now from a different position, perhaps 30 meters distant. 180, it said. Time is complete. You have had your 3 minutes. Now we discuss what happens next. Yamamoto felt his confidence, built over months of training and weeks of successful operations, crumble. He was facing an opponent who understood his equipment, his tactics, his patterns, and his thinking. The toy weapon he had dismissed was in the hands of someone who clearly knew how to use it. The simple farmer he had scorned had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded his own in this specific tactical situation. Your name is Corporal Takeshi Yamamoto, the voice continued. You trained at the facility in sinking for 8 months. Your scores were excellent in marksmanship but average in fieldcraft. You are 23 years old. You have a younger sister named Akiko and parents who live in Osaka. Your father is a postal clerk. Your mother makes traditional pottery. The level of detail shocked Yamamoto more than anything else. This was not guerrilla intelligence. This was something more organized, more comprehensive. Somehow his personal information had been acquired and shared. We know these things because we intercept your letters, the voice explained. All correspondence passing through San Fernando is copied before being sent forward. Your last letter to your sister mentioned the acacia trees and how they reminded you of the cherry trees at home. That letter helped us identify your likely observation positions. Yamamoto's throat felt dry. The operational security failure was massive. If guerrillas were intercepting and reading military correspondence, the intelligence compromise extended far beyond his personal situation. You have been kind in your letters, the voice said, and now the tone was less cold, almost conversational. You write about missing home but never about specific military operations. You describe the landscape but not troop movements. You follow the guidelines you were given about correspondence security. This is noted. This is appreciated. Yamamoto did not know how to respond. The situation had moved so far beyond his training that he felt unmoored, uncertain about basic protocols. I am going to show myself now, the voice said. Please do not do anything sudden. My associates have you covered from multiple positions. Your tactical situation cannot be improved by aggressive action. A figure emerged from behind a thick stand of bamboo, approximately 40 meters from Yamamoto's tree. The man was indeed dressed as a farmer, But now Yamamoto could see details that his earlier observation had missed or dismissed. The man's posture was straight, military in its bearing. The weapon, while old, was held with the casual competence of someone deeply familiar with its operation. The man's face was calm, showing neither fear nor aggression. "My name is Sergeant Manuel Santos," the man said. "Before this conflict, I was an officer in the Philippine Scouts. I received training at Fort William McKinley. I know your equipment because I trained alongside Japanese military observers during a joint exercise in 1939. I know your tactics because I studied them." Yamamoto stared at the figure. The transformation was complete. What he had seen as a simple farmer was actually a trained soldier. What he had dismissed as a toy weapon was equipment wielded by someone with professional military experience. What he had assumed was guerrilla incompetence was actually calculated tactical deception. "You are wondering why I'm telling you this," Santos continued. "You are wondering why I have not already taken action. The answer is simple. We want you to return to your unit. We want you to tell them exactly what happened here. We want them to understand that their assumptions about who we are and what we are capable of are incorrect." Yamamoto found his voice, speaking in halting English. "Why would you let me leave? Why give away your capabilities?" "Because we want your commanders to be uncertain," Santos replied. "We want them to look at every farmer and wonder. We want them to question every piece of intelligence. We want them to feel what you are feeling right now, the realization that you do not understand this landscape or the people in it as well as you believed." Yamamoto was silent, processing the implications. This was psychological warfare of a sophisticated type, aimed not at destroying him physically, but at undermining the confidence and assumptions that governed military decision-making. "You will descend from your position," Santos said. "You will leave your rifle, your ammunition, and your field equipment. You will walk west on the main trail. After 3 hours, you will reach your unit's perimeter. You will report what happened. And when your commanders dismiss your story as impossible or cowardice, you will insist on its truth. This is how we begin to change the calculation." Yamamoto hesitated. Surrendering his weapon violated every principle of his training. Returning without equipment would lead to questioning, possible discipline, and certainly humiliation. As if reading his thoughts, Santos spoke again. "Your alternative is to remain in this tree until you collapse from heat and exhaustion. We will wait. We have patience. Or you can attempt to engage, and my associates will respond. Those outcomes are less useful to both of us." Slowly, carefully, Yamamoto began his descent. The ancient patterns of honor and duty warred with the immediate reality of his situation. As he climbed down, he could see other figures emerging from positions he had not suspected. 2 men near a rice paddy bund, another positioned in the banana grove, a fourth watching from higher ground to the northeast. 5 fighters total, all positioned to cover his tree from different angles. The tactical reality was undeniable. When he reached the ground, Santos approached. Up close, Yamamoto could see that the man was perhaps 50 years old, with the kind of weathered competence that came from decades of experience. This was not some desperate peasant playing at resistance. This was a professional soldier fighting for his homeland, using every advantage intelligence and terrain could provide. "Your weapon," Santos said gently, and Yamamoto handed over the Type 97 rifle. Santos examined it with professional interest, working the bolt mechanism and checking the sight alignment. "Good equipment," he observed. "Well maintained. You are careful with your tools. This will serve our purposes well." Yamamoto removed his ammunition pouches and equipment belt, feeling each piece of equipment leave his body like a diminishment of his identity. Without his weapon and gear, he felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical danger. "Walk west," Santos repeated, pointing toward the trail. 3 hours. Tell them everything. Make them understand that their maps and intelligence reports miss what matters most, that the people they are trying to control are more capable, more organized, and more determined than they imagine. Yamamoto began walking, his mind churning through the implications of what had happened. The 3 minutes that Santos had counted had changed more than just his tactical situation. They had changed his understanding of the entire conflict, his role in it, and the assumptions that had guided his training and his thinking. As he walked, he heard Santos call out one final time. "Corporal Yamamoto, take care of yourself. Survive this conflict. Return to Osaka and your family. Make pottery with your mother. This is not your war to die in." The kindness in those words was somehow more devastating than any threat could have been. Yamamoto walked on, leaving behind his confidence, his equipment, and his certainty that training and technology could substitute for understanding the people and the landscape. The 3-hour walk back to his unit's perimeter gave Yamamoto time to construct and reconstruct his report. He knew how it would sound, like an excuse, like cowardice, like the invention of someone trying to explain away the loss of equipment and position. He knew his commander would be skeptical, that his fellow soldiers would question his courage, that the incident would mark his record and possibly his future assignments. But Santos had been right. The story needed to be told precisely because it would create uncertainty. Other snipers would hear it. Other units would begin to question their assumptions. The psychological impact would spread through informal channels, creating the kind of doubt that could not be countered by official pronouncements or tactical briefings. When Yamamoto finally reached his unit and began his report, he told the truth exactly as Santos had instructed. His commander's face showed the expected skepticism, but Yamamoto persisted, providing detail after detail, explaining the sophistication of the tactical deception and the depth of intelligence the guerrillas possessed. Within weeks, new protocols were issued. Observation positions were rotated more frequently. Letters were subject to more stringent censorship. Assumptions about guerrilla capabilities were revised. The incident with one sniper in one tree had rippled outward, changing how the occupying forces operated across the entire northern Luzon region. But the larger change was internal. Yamamoto completed his service in the Philippines and returned to Japan in December 1944. He survived the conflict's remaining months and eventually made his way back to Osaka in 1946. He never spoke of his military service except in the most general terms, but he carried the lesson of those 3 minutes for the rest of his life. The toy gun he had laughed at had been in the hands of someone who understood not just weapons, but warfare itself. The farmer he had dismissed had proven to be more capable than his own training had prepared him to recognize. The 3 minutes that Santos had given him were sufficient to teach what months of military instruction had failed to convey. That underestimating an opponent based on appearance, equipment, or assumptions was the surest path to defeat. In the decades after the conflict, Yamamoto occasionally wondered what had become of Sergeant Manuel Santos. Had he survived? Had he lived to see the Philippines regain its independence? Had he returned to whatever life he had led before being forced to take up arms in defense of his homeland? Yamamoto had no way to find answers to these questions, but he hoped the man had survived, had found peace, and had been recognized for his service. The story of that morning in March 1944 became one small thread in the vast tapestry of the Pacific Campaign. No official record noted the incident, no battle honor marked the location, no memorial commemorated the 3 minutes when one carefully trained sniper learned that his assumptions were more dangerous than any enemy weapon could ever be. But the lesson remained. Warfare was not simply about equipment superiority or tactical training. It was about understanding context, respecting opponents regardless of their apparent resources, and recognizing that intelligence and determination could overcome technological advantages. The farmers carrying antique weapons were not toys to be laughed at. They were people defending their homes, using every advantage their knowledge and experience could provide. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Do not forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.